In this video, we will cover the features of the Sequencer and Graph Editor. Sequencer is a timeline-based animation tool. Before starting, we need to add an actor from our viewport into the Sequencer. You can do this in many different ways. The first way is to click the Add button on the far left of the Sequencer, choose Add Actor Track. If you select your actor and then go to Add Actor Track, you will see your selected actor at the top of the list. This way, you can select it more easily. The second method is to directly select the relevant object in the outliner and drag and drop it into the sequencer. Then click the plus sign on the right to choose the parameter you want. If you don't want to deal with adding an actor, you can work directly by adding your parameters instead. For this example, I will use the transform of a null actor. To do this, click the keyframe icon on the far right of the parameter you want to change. As you can see, we quickly added the parameter. To add your second keyframe, move the playhead to the desired frame. Move your object to the desired position, then click Add a new keyframe next to the transform. Your simple animation is ready. You can change the position of keyframes on the timeline by dragging the edges of the bar above, or directly grabbing the keyframes. In the same way, you can adjust the playback range. You can also adjust the sequence work range by entering your working range values in the bottom left and bottom right fields. For example, if you need a work range of 600 frames, enter 600 in the rightmost field. The view range in the middle will shrink. You can grab one corner of the view range to increase or decrease the number of frames we see. You can already observe that the view range end time value on the right changes as well. By dragging this bar left and right, you can change the frame timeline area you are working on. However, remember that the duration of your sequence is determined by the green bar on the left and the red area on the right. Green is start, red is end. But I want to suggest a shortcut. For example, if you have a long and complex timeline and want to quickly zoom in or zoom out on a specific frame, hold down the Control key and use the middle mouse button. You can move directly toward the area where your playhead is located. It's a nice shortcut for working quickly and efficiently. Right at this point, the transport controls located at the very bottom right are one of the most important areas. Play, pause, and reverse are the primary functions. You can start your animation, stop it, or play it in reverse. At the same time, you can also use the spacebar as a shortcut for play and pause. The other standard transport control settings are the to end and to start buttons. If you want to move frame by frame, you can also use to next and to previous. Let's proceed with examples for other features. For example, if you accidentally moved your start position, manually dragging it back to 0 may not give an exact result, and you want to set it back to 0 again. First, type 0 in the area that indicates where our playhead is located, and place the playhead exactly at 0. Then click on the green icon here called Set Playback. Start to the current position. Your start value will come exactly to 0. Or in different scenarios, you can also use the red icon here to adjust your playback end position. As an easier way, you can simply enable this feature above that allows you to move between frames. Both of these methods can be useful in many different scenarios for different purposes. The last feature here is the jump to next key buttons, but don't confuse this with the next key buttons next to tracks or parameters, because the buttons on the track will only jump between keys within that track. But the jump to next buttons here will jump between all keys in the sequence. To understand this, I'm adding another animation. As you can see, even though the two buttons have the same shape, they behave differently. The rightmost button is the looping setting. If you want to play your sequence as a loop, you need to use this button. Let's return to the area where the track list is located. The icons to the left of each track name give you some options for determining track order or deciding which tracks will play while you're working. For example, if you use the leftmost pin this icon, the track you pinned will be fixed to the top of your track list. This way, you can establish a priority order between your tracks. The second option, Lock, disables editing options on that track. If you want to lock all tracks, the lock on the far right of the sequencer will lock editing on all tracks. Deactive and mute will turn off the tracks you use and deactivate them on the timeline. The difference is as follows. If you use deactive when you reopen your project, you will still see that this track is deactivated. In other words, this is a savable feature. However, if you use mute, the track will be temporarily muted. Even if you save the file, close it, and reopen it, you will see that the mute feature has been reset. In other words, this is not a savable feature. I will apply deactive to one track and mute to another. I save and close it. Then I reopen the same project. As you can see, deactive is still here, but mute could not be saved. Let's continue with another feature called Solo This Track. We can also define this feature as isolate, meaning when activated, only the tracks with Solo This Track selected will be played in the timeline. Next to add, there is the filter and search bar. The icons next to the search bar are view settings for the track list. The first isolates the selected track. The second hides the selected track. The third shows all tracks. Let's continue with animation settings. When you select any of your keys, you will see your key interpolation options. You can use these presets for interpolation settings. Generally, the most commonly used presets will be auto, linear, and constant. When you want to edit the interpolations of your animation in more detail, the feature you should use is the graph editor. You can open your graph editor by clicking the icon here. For example, I want to exaggerate the motion of our current animation from fast to slow at the end. For this, I need to right-click the relevant key and select Weighted Tangents. I hold the control point and, while pressing Shift, move it away from the key. This way, I was able to create a custom curve. I apply the same change to my other track. We were able to adjust our animation this way. For our overlay graphics to work, we need to define sequences like in, out, or change within the same project. Of course, the number of sequences can increase or decrease depending on the need and usage. To do this, open the tab on the right side labeled Motion Design. Here you see it along with the name of the sequence we are in. If you don't see this tab, check from View Options whether Sidebar Controls is enabled. We define here that this sequence should be our in animation, and we also define the tags we need to set for each sequence from the settings panel here. These tags or sequence names are elements that enable communication with transition logic. Now, right-click the sequence and choose Apply Preset, then select In. The moment you select it, the sequence name and tag will change. As a short extra note for now, standard transition logic has tags defined for in and out. So even if you change your sequence name, this will not affect the transition logic. Of course, this is something that can be configured if needed. We will examine transition logic in more detail under its own heading. After completing our in animation, there are two different ways to create our out animation. The first is to create a new sequence with add at the top left and make your out animation. If you want to create a different animation from the in animation, this is the workflow you should use. Then don't forget to assign the out preset to this sequence. The second is to duplicate the existing sequence. This way, without creating a new animation, you can just reverse the keys and have your out animation. Another important topic is the marks we use on the timeline. They are important because they control your sequence play according to how they are defined. They can even be defined in transition logic if needed. To create one, right-click the frame you want and say Add Mark. Then lock it so you don't accidentally move this mark. Basically, a mark has 5 different roles. To define these roles, open the Marks menu from the settings in the Motion Design sidebar. Let's start trying out these roles under the Role section. A mark actually doesn't do anything. It only serves to reference the relevant frame for use in transition logic. Stop stops the sequence until a continue or next command comes in the rundown. Pause allows you to stop your mark within a time you can define. Jump allows you to jump from one mark to another within the sequence. To apply the jump, we need another mark. Then, assign this B mark as the jump mark of mark A. As you can see, the animation jumps from A to B, and the frames in between are skipped. For now, we can delete the B mark. Reverse reverses the playback direction. If you want to see all the settings of your mark or keys at once, you can also use the selection sidebar. As you can see, the previous settings are also available here along with extra settings like color change. Thank you for listening.